He says he's innocent. He says he's not guilty.
He says he is completely innocent. He claims he is not guilty at all, but the world no longer believes him. In just a matter of a few weeks, Tom Parker Bowles, the biological son of Queen Camilla, went from being a highly respected and familiar face in the highest echelons of British high society to becoming the absolute center of a shocking, unprecedented financial scandal that has rocked the very foundations of the monarchy. This massive conspiracy directly involved royal properties, hidden funds, and secretive maneuvers within the palace. Yet, the most astonishing part of this entire saga is that the single person who exposed this entire web of deception was none other than Princess Anne herself, the sister of the king and the legendary Iron Woman of the royal family. It all began on what was supposed to be a regular, elegant evening at the prestigious Claridge's Hotel in London. During this high-profile party, surrounded by the media, foreign dignitaries, and the British aristocracy, Tom suddenly did the unthinkable. He stood up and publicly, fiercely criticized Princess Anne. He did not hold back, calling her a living symbol of an outdated, rigid, and completely authoritarian monarchy that was holding the country back from true progress. The guests in the room were completely frozen in shock. No one could believe that anyone, especially someone outside the direct bloodline, would be bold enough to directly confront and insult the woman widely regarded as the toughest, most disciplined member of the British royal family. However, Princess Anne did not react with anger. She did not shout back, nor did she make a scene. It was precisely that cold, calculated silence that sent shivers down the spines of those inside the palace who knew her well. In the days that followed, a sudden wave of coordinated media articles attacking Princess Anne began to flood the British press, while at the same time, Tom was increasingly brought by his mother, Queen Camilla, into highly sensitive internal royal meetings. Seeing this pattern, Princess Anne began to suspect that this public insult was no longer just an act of reckless personal ambition by a spoiled son. It was a carefully prepared plan, drawn up years in advance to shift the balance of power. Is Tom merely a helpless pawn in a much bigger game, or is there a greater, hidden force behind him quietly manipulating the future of the British throne? Recently, Buckingham Palace has been shaken to its core by this unprecedented scandal. Tom Parker Bowles has lost his entire reputation, his standing, and his honor in just a few short weeks. The man who was once expected by many to become the modern, fresh face of the extended royal family is now completely shunned and isolated by the British aristocracy. Prestigious clubs have formally rejected his membership, major business partners have abruptly canceled multi-million-dollar contracts, and the very media outlets that once praised his charm now unanimously condemn his actions. Everything stems from a secret, illicit financial network involving highly valuable royal properties that was quietly exposed behind closed doors. Projects worth hundreds of millions of pounds were being systematically manipulated, with massive funds flowing directly into private pockets under the sophisticated guise of modern investments and royal renewals. Tom has transformed overnight from an ambitious social elite into a dark symbol of power-hungry greed and reckless betrayal. His spectacular downfall serves as a chilling warning to anyone who dares to challenge the centuries-old royal order. But everything truly exploded exactly 1 month ago at that lavish royal party held at Claridge's Hotel. The venue, which stands as the ultimate symbol of London luxury, was filled with sparkling crystal chandeliers, violins playing soft classical melodies, and premium champagne flowing endlessly. Members of the royal family, high-ranking aristocrats, and top international business leaders had gathered in an atmosphere that was both solemn and full of hidden social calculation. It was an evening that many had looked forward to for reinforcing their political and social positions, but no one in that room expected it to become the historic night that changed the palace forever. Tom Parker Bowles stepped onto the stage with a highly confident demeanor, an air of arrogance, and a radiant smile that suggested he already owned the room. He wore a perfectly tailored suit and moved with a clear, aggressive purpose. When the microphone was handed to him for a routine speech, he did not hesitate for a single second. He looked straight into the crowd, fixed his eyes near the royal table, and spoke in a firm, loud, and challenging voice. he declared to the room that the royal family desperately needed immediate change. He openly stated that Princess Anne was the ultimate symbol of outdated conservatism, accusing her of controlling internal palace power too tightly and arguing that she was no longer suitable for a modern, open monarchy that needs to be close to the public. He boldly told the audience that they could not let old-fashioned thinking continue to hinder the progress of the nation, proclaiming that it was finally time for new faces and new ideas to take over. The entire grand hall suddenly fell into a deathly, suffocating silence. The initial chatter and laughter died away instantly. Many experienced, older aristocrats exchanged astonished, fearful glances. Never before in modern history had anyone dared to publicly criticize Princess Anne in such a direct, insulting manner. And the woman of steel resolve with more than 5 decades of unbroken public service sat at the main table. Her face remained completely, characteristically calm, but her cold eyes flashed with a sharp, lethal vigilance. She did not offer a verbal response at that moment. She only gently set down her champagne glass, her fingers tightening slightly around the stem, as if restraining a deep, powerful anger. At that exact moment, what she felt was not personal hurt, but a profound architectural suspicion. Whispers spread rapidly throughout the room like wildfire. Some tried to stay composed and pretend nothing happened, but everyone felt the sudden, terrifying tension in the air. Queen Camilla, seated not far away, had initially smiled with a sense of satisfaction at her son, but that smile quickly froze on her face when she noticed the horrified reactions of the room. King Charles, despite his ongoing poor health and visible exhaustion, also frowned deeply, clearly displeased by the sheer disrespect. That very night, the British media absolutely exploded. Major newspapers ran massive headlines declaring that Camilla's son had publicly challenged Princess and warning that a royal power struggle had officially erupted. Comments flooded social media networks like a devastating tidal wave. While a small minority supported Tom for his apparent boldness, the overwhelming majority of people loyal to the monarchy condemned him as an ungrateful, treasonous outsider who lacked any respect for tradition. The aristocracy immediately began to distance themselves from him. Future invitations for Tom vanished into thin air overnight. He still tried to maintain a calm, smiling appearance as he left the hotel, but everyone knew he had just ignited a real, destructive war. Princess Anne returned to her palace residence that night with a heavy heart but a crystal-clear mind. She understood better than anyone that Tom's aggressive words were not aimed solely at her personality. They were a calculated signal that a specific internal faction wanted to violently shift the balance of power within the royal family, especially at a fragile time when her brother King Charles's health continued to decline. And did not panic, for panic is not in her nature. Instead, she knew she had to act with absolute precision. Her silence at that moment was not weakness, but a profound strategic calculation. She would never allow raw personal ambition to destroy what the royal family had built over hundreds of years of sacrifice. From that fateful party, a real storm began to brew in the dark. Tom Parker Bowles foolishly thought he had opened his path to ultimate glory, but in reality, he had unknowingly stepped into a deadly chess game where the loser could lose absolutely everything. And Princess Anne, with her steel resolve and deep institutional knowledge, was already moving her pieces, fully ready to enter the fray and protect the crown. The shockwave from the Claridge's hotel incident did not fade away. Instead, it grew into a silent, suffocating tension that crept into every corner of St. James's Palace. Following that public confrontation, the media storm did not just target Tom Parker Bowles for his sheer arrogance, but it also turned sharply, almost systematically, toward Princess Anne. Within just 48 hours, a series of deeply critical, carefully orchestrated articles began appearing in major British newspapers. The headlines were highly unfavorable to the established royal hierarchy, going far beyond mild social criticism. These pieces delved deeply into Anne's public image, painting her as rigid, stubborn, and desperately conservative. Some columnists went so far as to accuse her of holding too much internal power behind the scenes, arguing that her traditionalist views were actively obstructing the progress of a modern monarchy. Some writers even subtly implied that Anne's sudden coldness toward Tom was born out of fear, a fear of losing her long-standing influence within the family in the face of Tom's rapid rise. The British public began to divide rapidly. A small but vocal segment online supported Tom, foolishly believing he was a brave modernizer who dared to speak the brutal truth to power. However, the vast majority of citizens, those deeply loyal to the crown, still fiercely respected and, recognizing her as the woman who had quietly, selflessly served the nation for half a century without ever complaining, and sat alone in her private, high-security office at St. James's Palace, facing a towering stack of press documents and intelligence briefs delivered in sealed briefcases. She turned the heavy pages calmly, her expression unreadable, but her fingers tightened with each critical line she read. It wasn't that she had never faced public criticism before. Over her long life, she had weathered countless media storms. But this time was entirely different. This was not random journalistic speculation. This was a highly organized, heavily funded campaign designed to damage her reputation. Public opinion wants to paint me as an old obstacle, Anne said quietly to her most trusted senior aide, her voice low, steady, but filled with a dangerous resolve. But they are profoundly wrong. I am not so easily shaken by cheap ink and paid headlines. She then turned her immediate attention to far more important matters, the internal guest lists and executive schedules for upcoming royal events and state councils. When she opened the secure internal electronic file and frowned deeply, her sharp eyes narrowing, Tom Parker Bowles's name appeared with an alarming, almost unprecedented frequency. He was no longer just listed at routine charity events or high society music galas. He was officially invited to closed-door, highly confidential meetings concerning royal finances, massive real estate holdings, and private investment funds. Moreover, the official security log revealed that the person who had formally proposed and authorized his presence was Queen Camilla herself, always accompanied by a brief, written note stating that Tom would serve as a representative of a modern image and a crucial generational connection for the future. And paused, staring intently at the glowing screen. What exactly was Camilla doing? Was her brother Charles's wife quietly, stealthily pushing her own biological son into the very center of true royal power? The initial suspicions that Anne had harbored during the party had now become clearer and more terrifying than ever before. Anne knew that Camilla was not a blindly reckless woman, but she also understood that a mother's fierce love and protective instinct could drive people to perform incredibly dangerous actions, especially with King Charles steadily weakening due to his ongoing illness. The balance of power in the palace was shifting in the dark, and Anne refused to sit idle. She began to act quietly, systematically, and completely outside the official palace channels. She contacted her old, trusted sources, men and women truly loyal to the legacy of the monarchy, individuals who owed nothing to the new faction. She requested a comprehensive, off-the-record background check on Tom Parker Bowles's recent financial dealings and political relationships. Each report that returned to her desk only increased her deep concern. In recent months, Tom had not just been attending parties. He had held multiple private meetings with prominent, aggressive real estate tycoons and participated in closed discussions about massive redevelopment projects on land owned directly by the royal family. Some suspicious transfers from royal charity funds were also recorded, hidden under vague, convoluted justifications. And sensed clearly that this was absolutely no coincidence. Tom was being actively protected and elevated by Camilla to build a separate, independent influence network right inside the heart of the palace. Camilla, you are leading your own son down a dangerous path of no return, and thought inwardly, her inner voice filled with a mixture of profound worry for the institution and a lethal determination to stop it. She understood that if she did not intervene in time, the centuries-old royal family could easily fall into the hands of people who cared only for personal gain and financial power. From that moment on, Princess Anne officially launched her secret investigation. She made no noise, held no press conferences, and revealed her findings to no one except a few of her most trusted security operatives. Going back in time just a few months, the first signs of this internal storm were carefully hidden behind the glittering, perfect royal facade. At that time, King Charles's health was steadily declining, creating a quiet panic behind closed doors. Lengthy treatment sessions, postponed state meetings, and a growing anxiety about the eventual transfer of power had gradually become the main whispered topics in the private palace corridors. Queen Camilla clearly recognized a harsh, terrifying truth. If she did not act decisively right now, her own position and that of her children could easily be pushed to the margins of history once Charles was no longer at the center. She did not want to be a queen in name only, forgotten by the next generation. She wanted to ensure a lasting, permanent influence over the royal estate. And her strongest, most ambitious card was Tom Parker Bowles. Under the sophisticated guise of building a fresh, modern image for the monarchy, Camilla had begun introducing Tom into the internal administrative machinery. At first, it was only small, harmless charity events, but gradually, the frequency and importance of these meetings increased dramatically. Tom quickly seized every single opportunity. Through key individuals close to Camilla, ranging from corruptible financial advisors to royal property managers, he gained unprecedented access to sensitive, non-public information. Major, highly lucrative projects in London, Scotland, and several wealthy coastal areas owned by the Crown appeared on his private desk one after another. He began participating in secret, unrecorded negotiations, signing preliminary agreements, and building deep, dangerous relationships with wealthy international businessmen. In a private evening at Clarence House, away from guards and listening devices, Camilla had sat facing her son, the warm golden light failing to hide the deep worry etched onto her face. "Tom, you must be incredibly careful," Camilla had whispered softly, her voice full of maternal anxiety mixed with cold determination. "Charles is weak. William is consumed with his own responsibilities, and this is our only chance to strengthen our position permanently. But one wrong step, and everything we have built will fall apart." Tom had only smiled, his eyes flashing with a clear, uncontrollable ambition. "Mother, I don't want to wait in the shadows any longer," he had replied confidently. "This royal family needs to change, and is too conservative to see it. She is holding the keys to the estate too tightly. I will prove that we can bring a new, highly profitable wind to this palace, and people will be forced to respect us." Camilla had remained silent, then nodded her approval, completely unaware that her motherly protection was actually paving the way for a massive disaster. Funds from internal accounts began to be discreetly, quietly redirected, and real estate contracts were carefully drafted under complex shell companies. Tom's sudden, aggressive criticism at the Claridge's party was not an impulsive moment of anger. It was a carefully calculated, strategic move designed to test public opinion and establish himself as a powerful figure who dared to challenge the old guard. But it was precisely in that silence and those stealthy, illegal steps that Camilla had unintentionally ignited a war she could never hope to control. Tom, fueled by his surging ambition, had simply moved too fast, and the ultimate guardian of tradition, had already noticed the dangerous cracks forming in the palace walls. The plan seemed perfect on paper, but when the iron will of Princess and was provoked, the real storm was only just beginning to break. The silent countdown inside the palace walls had finally reached its absolute expiration, and before Tom Parker Bowles could intensify his media counterattack, Princess Anne struck with a clinical, devastating decisiveness. She did not choose a public stage or a chaotic press conference for her final move. Instead, she chose the perfect, inescapable moment. It was a closed-door, highly classified executive meeting at Clarence House, an assembly attended by only a select few members of the ancient Privy Council and specifically tracking royal property management. Tom Parker Bowles was present as a special guest, a position that had been aggressively pushed and authorized by Queen Camilla just days prior. The heavy atmosphere in the room was suffocating from the very second the heavy oak doors were locked from the inside. Anne entered the chamber with a perfectly calm demeanor, but her presence radiated an undeniable, towering institutional authority that instantly silenced the room. She did not waste time with formal pleasantries. Instead, she walked straight to her seat, fixed her piercing eyes directly on Tom, and spoke in a voice that was cold, sharp, and cutting like a blade. "Tom, do you honestly believe that you can continuously exploit the sacred name of the British royal family to build your own private financial empire?" she asked, the silence in the room deep and terrifying. "You have systematically manipulated multi-million-dollar real estate projects, intentionally diverted public donations from royal charity funds, and attempted to construct a secretive political network to insulate your greed. I hold the complete, unassailable evidence right here, so do not bother wasting your breath trying to deny it." Tom, attempting to rely on his usual media-trained arrogance, initially maintained a defiant, mocking smile. "Your Highness, you are merely slandering my name out of a bitter, personal hatred toward my mother," he replied, his voice echoing in the quiet room. "This is nothing more than an internal political purge designed to protect your outdated position." But Princess Anne did not give him a single second to recover his composure or gain momentum. She reached down and placed a remarkably thick, black leather folder directly onto the center of the table, opening it page by page with a slow, agonizing deliberation. Contracts signed under foreign shell companies, recorded bank transfers running through Swiss accounts, encrypted internal emails, and detailed surveillance logs of his secret late-night meetings on yachts with opposition political figures. Everything was clearly, logically arranged, and completely irrefutable. Under the crushing weight of the evidence and the horrified, stone-cold stares of the senior council members in the room, Tom's confident facade began to disintegrate rapidly. Heavy beads of cold sweat broke out across his forehead, his face turned completely pale, and his hands began to tremble visibly as he looked at the documents bearing his private signature. I only wanted to bring necessary, modern change to the family," Tom stammered, his voice losing all its previous power. "King Charles is too weak to manage everything, Prince William is not fully ready to take over, and my mother and I were only trying to secure the future." His half-finished, desperate sentence inadvertently confirmed his guilt to everyone present. He had openly confessed to a coordinated palace coup in front of the highest council. At that exact moment, the entire meeting room fell into a deathly, frozen silence. Queen Camilla, seated not far from her son, turned completely pale, her breath catching in her throat as her fingers gripped the edge of the wooden table so tightly her knuckles turned white. She realized, with absolute horror, that the game was over. The very next morning, Princess Anne officially and formally presented the entire, unedited dossier of evidence before the full royal council and the senior legal advisors of the crown. She spoke briefly, clearly, and with absolute precision, refusing to inject any personal bias or emotional narrative into her presentation. The cold facts spoke entirely for themselves. The verified documents conclusively proved that Tom Parker Bowles had aggressively exploited his proximity to the throne to manipulate at least 7 major real estate projects across London and Scotland, worth an estimated £350 million. Furthermore, he had successfully diverted critical funds from established royal charity accounts directly into personal offshore shell companies, while simultaneously building a rogue political network with influential figures in Westminster to challenge the future succession. The real storm hit the British media and high society immediately like a devastating tidal wave, and this time, the narrative completely turned against him. Within a matter of hours, the very newspapers and media outlets that had once subtly supported Tom's modern view now unanimously and fiercely condemned him as a blindly ambitious, power-hungry outsider driven by pure greed. His business partners, terrified of being linked to a historic royal scandal, canceled their multi-million-dollar contracts mass scale within the afternoon. Aristocratic clubs sent immediate, formal letters severing all past and future ties with him. Those wealthy tycoons who had once happily shaken his hand on luxury yachts along the Thames now publicly issued frantic statements declaring they had absolutely no further connection to his enterprises. Tom Parker Bowles went from a man who expected to become the wealthy, modern face of the extended monarchy to a completely isolated, toxic figure in less than 24 hours. His personal phone fell completely silent, his financial lines were frozen by legal order, and his social reputation collapsed beyond any hope of repair. However, it was Queen Camilla who suffered the heaviest, most permanent consequences of this failed conspiracy. Her standing and influence within the palace walls dropped to an all-time low. Many senior members of the royal family permanently distanced themselves from her, and she was immediately excluded from all future internal councils and critical financial decisions regarding the estate. The trust between her and the core institution was completely shattered. Rumors of a permanent, quiet separation from King Charles began to spread rapidly through the global press. In a private, dark evening inside Clarence's house, completely isolated from the court, Camilla looked at her ruined son with eyes full of immense pain, exhaustion, and despair. "You went entirely too far, Tom," Camilla whispered, her voice breaking in the empty room. "I was a fool to protect your actions and let your ambition blind us." Tom sat in total silence, his face gaunt, his eyes hollow, with absolutely no trace remaining of the arrogant man who had stood on the stage at Claridge's hotel. He had once foolishly dreamed of becoming the hidden hand that would change the British monarchy forever, believing that true power was within his grasp. Now, all that remained for him was the bitter taste of regret and a total, historic collapse. The British royal family had once again proved to the world the absolute strength of tradition, discipline, and steadfastness over modern greed. Princess Anne, with her legendary steel resolve and absolute, unwavering loyalty to the crown, had successfully protected the throne from a severe threat from within. But the deep repercussions of this internal war would linger for decades to come. The question that millions of people around the world are now asking is whether Queen Camilla can ever truly maintain her dignity in the shadow of this betrayal, and how long it will take for the monarchy to fully heal this deep, internal fracture. The storm has finally passed, but the chilling lesson about the extreme dangers of power-hungry greed remains fully relevant. In your honest opinion, is Princess Anne truly protecting the sacred reputation of the royal family, or does she simply want to keep absolute power out of the hands of Camilla and Tom? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dive royal analysis, and make sure to click the next video showing on your screen right now to uncover more hidden palace secrets.